There's a famous meme where there's a chart of detectives, whether they could intuit the mechanics of the Death Note, and if they could solve the Kira case. But one detective is missing from the lineup here, and it's El Malloy II, or Waver Velvet from Fate Zero, and the NASAverse in general. A few days ago, the first episode of the anime series Fate Strange Fate dropped in Los Angeles with the English dub. And El Malloy features there heavily. So the Kira case is from Death Note and involves the mass killing of many criminals from a remote place and almost like a magical or supernatural means. That's why this interests El Malloy II or Waver, because it might reveal to the world the existence of magecraft and the unveiling of mystery, which the Mage Association or the Clock Tower wants to prevent. In this crossover universe, the Mage Association and Clock Tower does exist, but it is unknown to the general public, as is in NASAverse. And also the Shinigami exist, but it's not so much a well-known fact to the Mage Association because it's in Japan, which in Fate Zero and Fate Stay Night is considered to be a backwater rural area. So not as much knowledge of the occult or supernatural in that place. But it also attracts Waver Velvet because the Holy Grail War did happen in Japan. And he would probably deduce that the first people that were dying were first reported in Japan. Let's assume that L still exists in this universe. He's not replaced by Waver Velvet, or basically Waver Velvet will be running a parallel investigation alongside L, and it's just like a matter of who solves it first, basically. But we know L doesn't solve it. It's more so if we can see if Waver or El Malloy will rope in the authorities doing this, or if he has to like infiltrate or get like police information somehow if he needs to. So that's gonna be one of his tests. So you ask, why does it fall to me to solve this problem? Well, I literally binge watched Death Note yesterday, which was Thanksgiving. Yeah, I was really bored. But I also have been a Fate fan for much longer than that. F2P, by the way. So yes, I do play Fate Grand Order, as you can see in my other videos. So with that out of the way, let's do this. What are the conditions for victory for El Malloy or Kira? Well, for El Malloy or Waver, the preservation of mystery is his goal, and that is the elimination of Kira. So he doesn't really need proof. So if he does somehow find out it's Kira without solid proof and eliminates him somehow, then that counts as a victory for Waver here. And for Kira, simply if he catches Waver or El Malloy first, basically. That's a loss for El Malloy and a win for Kira. So unlike other cases, he doesn't really need proof to win, but well, it'll be a nice little extra if it could, basically. And for Kira, he doesn't have to kill himself before being found out. He just has to be stopped by El Malloy here. Let's set the stage here. Like in the canon of Death Note, Kira, or Light Yagami, finds a notebook that fell on the grass and picks it up and then tests the notebook. And then after a while, after writing many names of criminals that are broadcasted over the television, they all die of a heart attack. Or most of them. There are a few exceptions where he tests the notebook, but in general, they all die of a heart attack. Light Yagami then will have all his police resources, like his access to the computer by his dad, being the police chief, and of course also the Death Note, and also Ryuk as the Shinigami. That's what he will have access to. So it'll just be his normal arsenal before he is inducted into the task force. So he's just working by himself in the scenario until, well, since it's a parallel investigation, it'll be simulated, go on until the events of the series will catch up. So if El Malloy doesn't solve it by this and this time, he will soon become part of the task force with L, which will make it harder, and also be really hard after L's death too, with all his resources at that point. So we'll just go by the normal timeline if it can be decided that El Malloy does not solve the case in a timely manner, if that makes sense. So after the first initial wave of criminals dying, many people have noticed it originated first in Japan, And we have seen that the Mage Association has mages all around the world that do report to Clock Tower. The thing is, though, is if Waver or El Malloy will actually get on the boots on the ground in Japan, because while he has traveled to Japan before, he sometimes sends out his assistants or his students if it fits, as we see in the show, or also there are times where he doesn't send them out, or if he's gonna go as a group with himself and also the class. I know he did not like Flat Escardos going to Snowfield, which is close to Las Vegas, for the Holy Grail War, the fake Holy Grail War. But is it just because he thought it was a lot more dangerous and he had to kill other mages? Would he actually see this to be a mage thing? So that's some of the questions here. I would think that Weaver will actually suspect a mage doing the killings, or even like a cursed magical artifact or a force of some kind, like say spell or bounded field or something that someone just left operating or something. So I think he would first suspect a magical origin, like a purely magical origin. He would not probably suspect a civilian actually doing the killings first. But he would definitely narrow it to Japan, like many of the people in the world seems to have obviously found out. So we'll give that to him. And he also, but let's say he does actually travel to Japan, and we know that he also, by process of elimination, tested each location in the river for like magic in Fate Zero. That's where he like narrowed where Caster's sewer headquarters was. So he does have deductive abilities. So finding out Japan is the origin is not that hard. That said, would he actually watch the news that much and make like a correlation that criminals are dying? I think someone else would have to point that out if he doesn't actually check the news that much. Okay, he gets to Japan and deduces correctly that Kira is in Japan. Would he actually deduce that Kira is a student? We know that Waver did not grow up to be a normal kid. He seems to have been in mage school or mage academy, like Harry Potter and Hogwarts. But let's assume he did have a normal school life before, so he would know that. I think it's more likely he would actually deduce it to be a teacher first before a student, because he's a teacher himself, and teachers also like work the same times as a student will. And it actually kind of makes more sense if it's a teacher, because a student can write in a notebook during school time, and no one will really care. But a teacher, they have to be teaching and not writing down stuff during school time. So I think a teacher is actually more likely than a student to Waver, because he himself is a teacher. I would probably eventually conclude it was a student, but it's because of his students from his classroom having ideals, and he also would remember that he himself toppled his own teacher, which was the first El Malloy. So there's that. But basically, I think he would first conclude it was a teacher doing it, not a student. Well, we know about Light Yagami. What is Waver's or El Malloy's abilities? He is a mage, but as Waver, he had the lowest standard of magecraft, especially at the Fate Zero. He didn't have enough energy to actually power Rider Iskandar. He did show to have hypnosis. He hypnotized the couple, the old couple that he stayed with, but they broke through that. But he does have some hypnotic suggestions. According to the wiki, he carries cigars with different powers. They're magic. They're mystic codes, basically. If you know what mystic codes are, they're like a type of magical accessory. But he is not a very good mage himself. He is mostly an analysis type person, and that's why he's a detective. It's because he can read magic very well from others, and he can find their hidden talents. However, he seems to be bad at psychologically profiling people. Like when he got Flat Escardos a gift from a sweepstakes, which was from a video game, he thought that it would just distract Flat and not go to the Holy Grail War in Snowfield. But he was wrong. He had the opposite intention. So it seems that El Malloy is not very good at reading people and their intentions, but he is good at reading their talent and analyzing magic. So with that in mind, he probably will not deduce the intention of the Death Note killing, but he will deduce that it is supernatural. Obviously, well, most people would, given the evidence, unless there's like some kind of super technology, basically. But he would deduce enough that it's a supernatural or magic type thing. But he did also figure out doing Strange Fake that there were multiple factions in the fake Holy Grail War. So there's that. He would probably be able to suss out that there might be some things going on with different groups. Because, of course, the Interpol, but also L and the Miami House. And he might think that L could be a group or just one person. It's hard to tell. But he does need more information. Like he's not omniscient or very intuitive to the point that he can deduce everything. Like a split second of inspiration of like just knowing everything type thing, which we don't see that from the case files. So he'd be good at analyzing his magic, but bad at analyzing the people. The intention of Kira, or Light, is to have a new world, which could be very reminiscent of Iskandar with his world domination shtick. So he might have a clue on how that will work out. Like he could probably see like a twisted version of Iskandar in the acts of the Death Note killing. Speaking of other groups, El Malloy will have contacts with the mages in Japan, at least some of them, at least the official Clock Tower mages. Also, he may have contacts with the Holy Church. It's interesting that Death Note doesn't actually talk about how religions reacted to the Death Note. Like, we know new religions sprung up with the Kira worship, but we don't really hear about the actual religions reacting to Kira, so that might be something to explore. So that would be his contacts in Japan. Also, he has his students, which he could probably wrangle to come with him, or they would choose to go assist him in Japan, like Flat Escardos would, just to see Japan, basically. Also, he has Gray, his assistant. I guess we can call her El Malloy's Watari. She'll probably be coming with him. Of course, he has the El Malloy family, like his adopted sister. Shiro and Rin would probably have not met him yet, depending on what year Death Note is placed in. Although, let's just say it happens before the Fuyuki, because Death Note is an old work here. Well, it was released in 2006, and Fate Stay Night was released around the same time, 2004, I think. So I guess Rin and Shiro would be there. Just I don't think they've contacted yet each other, basically. So that would be that. But Kirei Katamine might have access to Rin, and El Malloy might have access to Kirei. But as his core group, it would probably be Gray as his Watari, basically, or bodyguard. Gray would probably be needed because in the Real Zeppelin Grace Note from the case files, which is the special for the Hakamori to Neko to Majutsushi, with the cat that dies from a curse, Gray was necessary to find out that it was connected to a curse on El Malloy because she was connected to the realm of death. So I would say that she will be able to somehow detect or at least sense the Shinigami if they ever get close to the Death Note somehow, or to Light Yagami. They may not like completely see them because was it the OVA or special? They weren't able to see the curse, but she was still able to detect it. Grace also a gravekeeper, which reminds me of the anime Sunday Without God, which is a very post-apocalyptic anime, and the main character is a gravekeeper, which really reminds me of her. Underrated anime, you should watch it. If El Malloy had his full team with the full classroom, that would probably be the best because he is described to be not have a good ability as a mage, but he's like he's not an athlete, he's more of a coach type person. Like he can find the talent of someone else and like amplify that, but he can't do it himself. So he's more of a theory kind of guy. But we'll cross that bridge when we get over it. So for now, it's only gonna be El Malloy and Gray, and he might call in some favors or contacts later on, but from a starting point, it's just gonna be him and Gray. Okay, let's assume that El Malloy II goes to Japan after deducing that Kira is in Japan, or at least focusing on Japan. Would he try to pull off a broadcast type thing to do that? Probably not, but it's gonna be hard for him to deduce more specific thing. Like he would need access to the police to find out that criminals that were only in the prisons that were classified were dying, unless, of course, it was broadcast in the news. So, Waiver will definitely need someone to be watching the news regularly. And we know that he doesn't really keep tabs because he has to call people, like in Strange Fake. He didn't even know that Flat Escardos was gone for like 2 days already, flying to the United States. But if he's gonna try to go it in a magical way, he might try to go to the police station like that fiance of the FBI agent did, and maybe he might meet Blake there. But that's a stretch, and so we don't just want to replicate what happens in the show and make it fate basically. But that's a possibility that he would go to the police station. We know he does do hypnosis, so he might try to hypnotize the reception desk to. But why would he go to the police station to get information? Maybe he can have someone in the inside to get some information. I mean, the church would probably be the closest to that. But we know that the Mage Association works with the United Nations because of Chaldea, which is in Fate Grand Order. So that's one thing. But they probably don't care too much about that. But Interpol is looking at stuff, so we don't know how well the non-Magecraft and Magecraft associations work together. So we'll keep that aside for now. But anyways, Waver will probably do some field work like he did in Fate Zero, and if he's with Gray, he might be able to detect a Shinigami eventually as he canvasses the place. If he figures out it was a student or teacher, he might go to some of the schools and sniff out like bounded fields or magecraft or whatever have you. So that's another possibility. So he doesn't have the resources to do a broadcast or even test anything, it's gonna be hard. If L is in this universe and he does the broadcast to the Kanto region of Japan, then he might deduce something from that when the Lind L Taylor dies and L is challenging Light Yagami. So as we said with the rules of this scenario, these are parallel investigations. So L will definitely have a head start with the broadcast and the testing, and Waver will be still stuck doing field work. And it's gonna be a small chance he would detect something. It will eventually be done, but it will take a lot of legwork. There is a similar instance that El Malloy had to go against a untraceable death thing, and that was with the Pale Rider and Strange Fake. He theorized a bit of what it is, and he deduced it was a concept of death made like a servant, but the servants could not detect him. However, Flat Escardos was able to find out with his abilities. So, I would say if El Malloy had Flat and Gray working together to find the Shinigami or the Death Note, they would probably like find traces of magic or mana or anything that would lead to at least one of the Death Notes or one of the Shinigami. So that will definitely cut down the time for him to actually get access to these artifacts. Now, we know that some mages can send familiars, and in Rail Zeppelin Grace Note case files, we see that they can track the source of a curse with a magic spell in the mirror, and they saw a car that was cursing El Malloy. So I assume that they can do something similar to track the Death Note Shinigami, or even Light himself writing on the Death Note. But first they would need access to probably like a dead body that was killed by the Death Note just to find the like magical trace of a curse. And we're assuming that the curses work in an understandable way by El Malloy. He is the head of the modern Magecraft theory class, which is a very open class that combines different approaches. So, and he again was in Japan, so he would at least probably has researched some Japanese supernatural stuff. So he would not be a stranger to that. So his first act should be trying to probably go to a morgue or cemetery where the criminals were dead by heart attack or whatever that was reported in news. Maybe even visit a funeral or something. And he would need like a necromancer type thing to try to contact the spirits, but maybe just having the trace of the Shinigami and Death Note would be fine. So it won't just be a random walking around Tokyo. So he should target the schools, the cemeteries, the morgues, wherever people are dying from the attacks, and also the police station. So that's his options. And just if he has help, like Flat and Gray and others, then he would split them up. But I think he would probably go to try to find a dead body with that was killed by the Death Note first. And then if he deduces that it was a teacher or student or someone in school that was killing, he can narrow down like where he can probably trace the effects of the Death Note to or the Shinigami to like one place, and then that's when you can restart the infamous potato chip scene. Like let's have it where El Malloy and El have set up surveillance on Light Yagami. It would be around that time, I would say. It'd be interesting to see if he can find out if he's hiding something just with his mannerisms. But I don't think so. El Malloy would not even though if he uses magecraft, which is untraceable to like science or whatever, if he did it during the surveillance time when Light knows all the cameras, he probably would not be able to suss out that he's been hiding things. That's only, of course, if it just happens to be the same time L sets up surveillance in his room. But if he didn't, then he'd definitely find the traces of the Shinigami curse. Well, oh, wait, also, well, the Shinigami would still be there. Yeah, Ryuk would still be in his room, but he's just not eating apples. So he might be detected through that. If Emily does decide to like break into the house somehow and actually check the room, that'd be interesting. We know he's broken into Caster's headquarters, but he was with Ryder and it wasn't really breaking entering because it was an open sewer. Would he have someone else do it? Probably. Now, would Elmaloy or Waver Velvet be immune to the Death Note? Well, there's two ways he can be immune to the Death Note. That is, would he have any magical protections against the Death Note? Or the Shinigami Eyes? We know that in the very first episode of Real Zeppelin, he was cursed, so he's not immune to curses. And the Death Note is a curse, so he's not immune from that. However, he has some bounded fields and two his cigars that could probably protect him in some way. And he does have other things, so since he knows that he's going into a battlefield of sorts, since during the episode in Real Zeppelin, he wasn't prepared, but now he's gonna prepare. So he would reasonably think he's gonna prepare at least a couple protections. The second way that he could be immune to the Death Note is if he uses a fake identity. It seems to be that Waver Velvet is his real name. El Malloy is not his real name, but a title. And that just brings up the question if he's gonna use El Malloy as his fake identity, or if he's gonna use his real name as a Waver Velvet during his stay in Japan, or a third identity completely. We know that at least some Fate characters have been using some fake passports, like Saber, which she has a passport that calls her Elizabeth Watson at Fate Zero. So that's one thing. So would Waver have that? It's not far from the truth. It's not far. They probably do as the major association, and he focuses on names and titles as curses in the prologue episode, so there's that. He would know not to use his real name, going out into the muggle world, so to speak. But would he be immune to the Shinigami Eyes? Well, we can match that up with some Mystic Eyes of Perception, which is a similar concept in the Nasiverse. And the Mystic Eyes can break through a lot of things, including bounded fields. So the Shinigami Eyes would definitely read his name and lifespan, I would think. So he would not be immune to that. At least I can't find a counterexample where he's not invulnerable to Mystic Eyes. So let's assume he can just be vulnerable to similar things like that. So that would set it up if Light ever confronts El Malloy. If he didn't have Missa with him to read his name, that would be tough for him to actually kill Waver. Otherwise, he's cooked because he can immediately be taken care of by Gray or someone just like that. Let's assume that they do encounter each other, but they're not at the point of their investigation where they can actually make an accusation or make a move. So I would think that Waver would just use his fake name with Light, and he just escapes that because of precautions. Would L or the task force reach out to Waver, or would Waver ever reach out to L or the task force? I floated the idea that Waver would go to the police station and maybe encounter Light that way, but that's probably improbable because he doesn't want to unveil mystery from Magecraft, which is his goal is just to protect the mystery. So he wouldn't necessarily try to reach L here. But L also disbelieves supernatural things, so there's that. So he might not even try to think if there's any groups like occult or like magic groups that have information about the method. So it's probably very unlikely they will try to look for each other. But if they do get together, then Waver can probably demonstrate some wagecraft, which is highly unlikely, unless he knows that he's able to like erase El's memories in the future somehow. But it's risky, and it goes against his principles of unveiling mystery here. El would accept like supernatural things in Magecraft once he has proof of it, which we see in the when he touches the notebook and sees a Shinigami. So yeah, he does need like incontrovertible proof of supernatural before he would think to reach out to any supernatural groups. And we don't see them try to find out any supernatural allies, basically, until they know about the Shinigami for sure. Throughout case files, Waver El Malloy would often mutter something about it's not the how done it, but the why done it. Because in the world of Magecraft, anything is possible. So it's not what the method is, it's the purpose or intention that's the most important. So could he actually suss out the intention here? Well, since it affects everybody in the world, he probably could eventually. As I already noted, it's similar to Iskandar's world domination shtick. It's also comparable to Kiritsugu's and Shiro's wish of saving the world, but rather than the Holy Grail, it's a Death Note. And also Gilgamesh, because he said he reincarnated in order to test the new world and have the survivors be ruled over by him. Finally, how would it actually all go down? So once El Malloy has scouted the area, scouted all the schools, the cemeteries, and found traces of the Shinigami death gods, he would eventually get to do surveillance on Light Yagami's room from a far off mirror, like a scrying mirror, and then he might attempt to break in. But he would probably need the help of his students for that, like Flat, Gray, and that Beast one, who I forget, because he's not a main character. So once he breaks in, he probably will get to the drawer and then take the false bottom off, and he would inevitably destroy the Death Note accidentally. Like he would detect the Death Note in the drawer, but he triggers the mechanism where it will burst into flames. Which that is his goal, is to not have the mystery of the world be broken, like the SCP Foundation. But in a sense, it's a failure because he would not be able to suss out the mechanism since being a mage, he's not that well adept to technology compared to normal humans. And just, well, yeah, normal humans in general. That's probably how it will go. And then once Kira and his book is gone, well, the book is gone. He probably still has like a few pieces of papers here and there as backup. But once that runs out, basically the killings stop until Misa does her notebook, and then they will have to find that one and get rid of it. But as for the case for just Kira and Light, that is probably how I think realistically it'll go. Waver accidentally destroys the Death Note, and he wins in the sense that his goal is fulfilled, but he doesn't actually do so by process of elimination, if that makes sense. Now, there's a good chance that El Malloy and Kira would encounter each other if he tries to get close to the house to break in. And if a fight ensues, then he's basically like that is with Gray. Though he might just do a simple memory erasure of some kind with hypnosis and then just get on by with their day once the book is either destroyed or retrieved, whichever which way. And basically, the killings just stop out of nowhere until Misa restarts them. Another way how I think is if L is really interested in the Gods of Death note that Light makes the criminals right. So he might do research on that and also might meet Waver because of it. That's probably one tenuous thread where they can get together and pool resources. If he asks Waver to interpret the Gods of Death note, no pun intended, they might go somewhere, and Waver might actually even detect some magical things. So that said, he might impress L enough to integrate Waver into the task force. And one thing he could do is to create probably a fake Death Note imbued with enough like magical talismans and something that would basically create like a reality marble type thing. It's kind of based on the special episode of Rail Zeppelin where Waver was the core of a reality rewriting in his high school reunion. But basically, it could just like hypnotize or trick someone to believing that they killed someone. Maybe something like that. and then it'll do like a decoy kind of type thing in the last half of the Death Note show where it was actually two decoys. So it'd be something like that. So that would be like a proper ending where it'll be revealed that Light was actually Kira all along, or even have like Great Blast, Ryuk, and Rem. That might be a final battle type thing in the more Fate style. So that could end that way. Also, that Waver would probably have to erase any memories or records of anything he talks about Magecraft to the task force, unless he like disguises it enough where it can be construed he's just like being historical and mystical, but not like in a true magic Magecraft way. And we know that the task force does call in specialists of different kinds, like the thief and also the actor person. So it's not far off to see if L is interested in the notes that were written. That Waver could be added on, but also Waver has to disguise himself enough so that mystery will not be unveiled, basically.